Hi, I'm Jonathan Hobbs, developer of the Hobbs Masters Needling Series and chairman of the AACP in the UK. I just want to spend a few minutes just talking to you about different types of acupuncture and needling. Now, one of the things I find is that people get very confused and concerned about the names and different types of needling. Some people talk about they do traditional Chinese acupuncture, some people say they do Western medical acupuncture, some people trigger points, some people dry needling, and some people use those terms interchangeably. So what do we really mean when we're talking about those? Now, for those of you with a Western medical background, don't get bent out of shape. I'm not going to be talking about sandals and candles here. I'm going to be talking about what is acupuncture and what is dry needling. And essentially, it's pretty much all the same thing. Now, I know that's going to upset a lot of people as well, but hear me out. Just entertain the idea here for a moment, and we'll just play through it and see what we think. So what we're thinking about is when we're inserting needles into the body, we're using the same needles in the same points. We're getting the same physiological reactions. Now, there's no traditional Chinese physiology, Western physiology. There's just physiology, and there's just the anatomy that we're inserting the needles into. What we need to understand is we've got traditional Chinese acupuncture, which has thousands of years as its heritage, and it leaves a legacy of clinical practice that we can utilise, and we can take experience from that, and we can work with those ideas and we can get outcomes. But if those techniques work, they don't work because there's some mystical methodology behind them. They work because there's physiology there. And traditional Chinese medicine is just observational consensus medicine. If we think about it in that way, we get less bent out of shape with our medical ideas or our Western medical ideas or our physiological concepts about how acupuncture works. And Western medical acupuncture is just reverse engineered Chinese acupuncture. That's all it is. We'll copy the same points, we'll look at the same techniques, the same prescriptions, and then we'll seek to find a physiological reason as to why it works. And when we apply that, we're applying it with an evidence-based background and a research-based background to try and understand why those points work. But essentially, Western medical acupuncture is reverse engineered Chinese acupuncture. So what's dry needling? Well, dry needling, essentially, is just segmental acupuncture. It's the same points, the same places. Sometimes it's in muscle, sometimes it's in connective tissue. So dry needling isn't always trigger point needling. So what's trigger point needling? Well, trigger point needling is just the needling of muscles. But when we look at the number of trigger points, which are the same as acupuncture points, that correlation is so vast, and the reasons those points exist is related to the anatomy and the response physiologically of that tissue once needled. So really, it's all very much the same. What we've got to remember is acupuncture as a concept is a man-made structure, it's a man-made construct, whereas the anatomy and physiology that's affected by the needling is in existence anyway. You know, the body doesn't know what sort of needling you're doing, it just knows you're needling, and all it knows is the physiological response that it gives back to that. So don't get confused, don't get concerned. When I talk about acupuncture and needling these days, I really just talk about needling. I'm not talking about traditional Chinese acupuncture, Western medical acupuncture, trigger point needling, dry needling. I'm talking about the insertion of a filiform needle into a certain anatomical location to get a certain physiological response. And that's what I'm talking about. Anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology, and how it all fits together and how it all works or it doesn't work. So that's a little note on different types of needling for you. Don't get confused, don't get concerned. It's the same needles into the same points, and don't get upset by that. You take care, and I'll speak to you soon.